There was a green that Appalachian families ate every single spring, and if a body skipped one step in the cooking of it, the same meal that fed you could kill you. I'm talking about poke salad, pokeweed. The old folks called it a lot of things, and every one of those names came with a warning attached. Now here's the part that still catches people sideways. This wasn't some starvation food that a family choked down when the smokehouse ran empty. It was looked forward to. It was a season, the way ramp season is a season. Come April, folks went out to the fencerows with a poke sack and came back with the first green thing anybody had eaten since the fall. And the whole time, they were carrying home a plant that is genuinely poisonous. Root, stalk, berry, and leaf. So stay with me. I'm going to tell you what that plant is, why families ate it anyway, what the old preparation actually was, and where it went wrong. And I'm going to tell you the one place in the whole business where a table full of people could get hurt. That last part is where this gets dark. Stick around for it. Pokeweed grows just about everywhere east of the Mississippi, and it does not need a bit of help from anybody. You find it on the edges of things. Fencerows, the lip of a garden, where a barn used to stand, and now there's just a foundation and a locust tree. Ground that's been disturbed and left alone, that's where poke sets up. It's a big plant. By August, it'll be taller than a grown man, and the stalk on it turns a color I've never seen on another plant, this deep magenta purple, near about the color of a bruise. Big oval leaves, and then those berries, clusters of them, dark purple, hanging down heavy off the stem like little bunches of grapes. Every child raised in the mountains got told about those berries and got told early. My grandmother had one rule. She said the same way every time, and she said it before we ever left the porch: you can look at the pretty ones, you don't eat the pretty ones. Here's the thing that made poke so peculiar in the food world of the hollers. The plant is poisonous, all of it, in different measures, and the strongest part of it is the root. And yet families ate the young leaves every spring for generations, and they ate them on purpose, and they had a whole method around it that mothers handed to daughters without ever writing a word of it down. That method is where the whole story lives. But first, understand why anybody bothered. You have got to picture what late winter actually was in a mountain house before a store run was a 20-minute thing. By March, what a family had left was what a family had put up. Green beans dried on a string, what we called leather breeches, hanging from a rafter and going gray. Shuck beans, a crock of kraut, sweet potatoes in a hole in the ground under straw, half of them soft by then. Cornmeal, maybe some canned tomatoes if the year before had been kind, and meat out of the smokehouse, which meant salt, and more salt, and salt again. Everything a family ate for 4 straight months was brown or salted, or both. Then the ground warms, and the first thing up, before the garden is anything but mud, before a lettuce seed has thought about it, is poke, shooting up out of last year's dead stalk, tender and bright green and about the size of an asparagus spear. The old folks called it spring tonic. Now I want to be plain with you about that word, because it gets people twisted around. When they said tonic, they weren't practicing medicine. They meant it the way you'd mean it about the first warm day in March. It's the taste of the year turning over. 4 months of salt pork and dried beans, and then something green and alive on a plate. That's what tonic meant on that mountain. So that's the pull. That's why a family went out and picked a plant they knew good and well was poisonous. Because it was first, it was free, and it grew in the fencerow of every farm from North Georgia to the top of West Virginia. Now I'm going to walk you through the old way, and I want to set one thing down before I do. I'm telling you this as history. This is a thing families did, remembered the way it was handed to me, and I am not standing here telling you to go do it. Poke is a poisonous plant, and people have been badly hurt by it. This is a story about how folks lived, not a recipe card. Keep that in front of you the whole way through this section. All right. The picking came first, and the picking was half of it. You took the young shoots only in the early spring, when they were maybe 6 or 8 inches up out of the ground and still tender enough to snap clean between your fingers. Leaves that were still small and pale, no purple showing anywhere on them. The old folks were fierce about that purple. Once color came up into that stalk, they said the plant was done for the table, and that was that. Nobody argued the point. And you cut it, you didn't pull it. That mattered more than anything else in the whole business. And I'll come back to why, because it's the heart of what I promised you. Then came the cooking, and the cooking was all about water. You washed the greens, and you put them in a pot of water, and you boiled them hard. Then, and this is the part everybody who tells this story hangs on, you poured that water off, all of it, down the sink, or out the back door onto the ground where nothing important was growing. Fresh water in the pot. Boil it again. Pour that off too. 2 boils and 2 pours was the common rule. Plenty of families did 3. My grandmother did 3, and I never once heard her offer a reason beyond that her mother did 3. Then, and only then, was it food. Drained and chopped and put in a hot skillet with bacon grease, and most times a couple of eggs scrambled right through it. Cornbread on the side. That was the spring meal, and folks who grew up on it will tell you it tasted like nothing else on this earth. What families understood, in their own terms, was that the badness in the plant went off into the water and that the water had to leave the house. They didn't talk about compounds. They talked about pouring it off, and about pouring it off twice, and about not being lazy with it. That was the tradition, and it was held to hard because everybody in those hollers knew somebody who had a story. Here's what I promised you at the top. Of every step in that whole process, there was one that families guarded above all the rest, and it wasn't the boiling. It was the picking. It was the root. Poke grows off a taproot, and that root is enormous. On an older plant, it can be the size of a man's forearm, sometimes bigger, running down deep and pale and fleshy under the dirt. And that root is the most dangerous part of the entire plant. Everything the old folks feared about poke, it's concentrated right there. Now think about a young shoot in April. It's 6 inches tall, tender, and it is sitting directly on top of that root, joined right to it. If you pull that shoot instead of cutting it, you can bring root up with it, a knuckle of it, a pale piece hanging off the bottom of the stalk that looks like nothing at all once it's in the poke sack, with 40 other stalks and a little dirt. And here is the terrible arithmetic of it. The boiling was built for leaves. Whatever a family believed those pores were carrying away, they understood the method as a thing for the tender greens, not for a chunk of taproot rotting along in the bottom of the pot. And the person cooking couldn't see it. It's dark green and wet in there. It doesn't announce itself. That's why it could take a whole table. Because it isn't one plate, it's the pot, mama and the daddy, and 4 or 5 children and the grandmother, all served out of the same skillet on the same evening, and every one of them getting a share of the same mistake. That's the thing that made poke different from every other danger on a mountain farm. A snake gets one person. A bad step off a ledge gets one person. This got everybody at once, sitting down together at the end of a good day. That's why my grandmother said cut it, and why she said it in the tone she did. And that is the one mistake I promise you at the top of this. There were other ways it went sideways too, and they were all versions of the same failure. Somebody was in a hurry. Picking too late in the season was the common one. A family that missed the window in April and went out in June anyway, taking bigger leaves off a stalk that had already started to color up. The old folks would tell you flat out that the plant changes as it grows, and that what was food in April is not food in June. They didn't have the science of it. They had the rule, and the rule was hard. Boiling once instead of twice. That was the lazy person's error, and it got named that way, plainly, by whoever caught you at it. And the one that gets people even now who don't know any better. The berries. Those beautiful dark purple berries that hang and fall. Children get into them because they look exactly like something you'd want to eat. They look like a grape. They stain your hands the deepest wine red you ever saw, and every child in the mountains has had purple fingers in September. That stain, by the way, is why the plant carries the reputation it does in ink and in dye. Poke juice will color cloth and it will color paper, and folks used it for that, and it fades over time to a brown, which is the honest truth about it as a dye, and probably why it never amounted to much of a trade. But the mistake that ends a family meal was always the root. Every other error made somebody sick, and sorry. That one is the one that could clear a table. What I find remarkable, looking back on all of it, is that none of this was written anywhere for most of its life. There was no book. There was a woman in a kitchen and a girl standing at her elbow, and the girl was told the rules in the order they mattered. Cut, don't pull. Small and green, no purple. Boil it, pour it off, boil it again, pour it off again. And then, the last rule, the one that carried the whole weight, if you're not sure, don't. That's a food tradition with a fatal edge to it, and it survived on nothing but talk. Mothers to daughters, grandmothers to grandchildren, across Kentucky and Tennessee and the Carolinas and West Virginia and down into North Georgia and Alabama for generation after generation. And it held mostly because the consequence of forgetting was so plain. Families that ate poke didn't treat it casually. They treated it like a loaded gun in the corner of the room. Useful in its way, perfectly steady, so long as everybody in the house knew exactly where it was and exactly how it worked. Poke sallet faded from most tables as the 20th century went on. Grocery stores put green things in a cooler year-round, and once you can buy a head of lettuce in February, the case for a poisonous fencerow plant gets a good deal weaker. It hung on longest where the old ways hung on longest, in the country, at church suppers, in the memory of people who were children when it was still just what you ate in April. So that's the whole of it, and let me put a bow on what I promised you at the start. The green was poke sallet. And Appalachian families ate it every spring because it was the first living green thing after 4 months of salt and dried beans. The plant is poisonous through and through, root and stalk and berry and leaf. The old method was to take only the young shoots in early spring, boil them, pour that water off, and boil them again, and families understood that pouring off as the thing that made the difference. And the one mistake, the one that could take a whole table at once instead of one person, was pulling a shoot instead of cutting it, and carrying a piece of that big pale taproot home in the sack where nobody could see it in the pot. One meal, one skillet, everybody at the table served out of the same mistake. I'll say it one more time and then I'll hush. I've told you this as history, the way it was handed down to me, not as something for you to go try. That plant is dangerous and always was, and the people who ate it knew that better than anybody. If your people had a poke story, I'd like to hear it. There's a version of these rules in every holler, and I doubt any two of them are worded quite the same. Leave it in the comments, and if you want to sit with more of the old ways, come along with me on the next one. I'm Silas. Take care of your own.